Hello, everyone. I'm howdy. So I'm going to today I'm going to be interviewing Austin Handel. Officer Ash on TikTok. He is he's a police officer, former police officer, former Marine, and he is going to give me insights on the police and how that's all working out. So he's incredibly insightful. He's working with sorry, I'm just getting technical difficulties here. Sorry. So Officer Ash is on TikTok. He is a former police officer. He's incredibly insightful. He's done tireless work for police reform, and he can give the reform of someone that is a police officer. So like I can get, so he's actually, what he is, he stands out above all of the rhetoric that you're hearing. And I thought it'd be very useful to get an actual police officer on here. So, I mean, he is a former officer. He can provide huge insight. So he was unjustly fired from his department. And so that's why he started speaking up. And he also has a big platform on social media. So he can kick ass. So that's how that's going. I'm waiting for him to join right now. So that's he's getting some technical difficulties sorted, and once he gets his technical difficulties sorted, it's over for all of you people. Yeah. So hold on a second. I'm just texting with him to be like, "What up? What's the deal with this?" So. You know what? Swear to God, I never do my hair. I don't know why. Like, I set up lights in my house. I set up lights and everything, and I never like do my I never like think like, oh, let me do my hair. Let me do things. I'm like this friggin' dude. It's like this is all like friggin' afterthought to me. I don't know why I'm like. Why am I like this? What up? There. I should have just like gone off the stream and like done my stupid hair. So yeah. Friday Night Highlights. Why is that stupid logo here? Oh no. There we go. Okay, no overlay. There we go. I'm going to get all of this out of here. Sorry for the technical nonsense. But yeah, so here we go. I'm boring all of you to fucking death. Holy shit. So yeah, good God. Is there any of you even still watching me? Sweet Jesus. I wouldn't watch me right now. Oh my God. Here we go. Let's look at the comments. Super down for this. Works better. Hair looking on point. There we go. So yeah, I'm waiting for Officer Ash to join me. So I've spoken with him before. I interviewed him before, but I reached out to him again. I said, listen, we got to talk again. I have a bigger platform right now, and we can talk more. And I'd like to get what you have to say out to like a bigger platform. So that's my thing. I'm texting him right now. So where he lives, he had a power outage, and there was some storm power outage. So the power just came back on, and so he's just about to get it on and just, set up his computer and talk with me. So yeah. So here we go. So here it is. So basically, yeah. So Austin, my boy Austin, he's a former police officer, he's a former Marine. He's not one of these, he's, I feel like there's a lot of rhetoric right now. People are talking, we're not, you're hearing about police reform from you're hearing about it from police officers that want more police and more internalized investigations. And I don't think I wanted to try and platform today a police officer that is pushing for reform, that can speak very candidly about how the police department works. And so I've spoken to him before. He can talk all day about that. So yeah, so I'm live right now on my Twitch and my YouTube and my Facebook and all that, and we're doing the things. And so yeah, so camera one, welcome everyone. I'm gonna have Austin Handel join me in a few minutes. Camera two, so go into my Twitch or my YouTube, and Austin Handel, he's a former police officer and former Marine, and he's going to talk about police reform. And he's going to talk about all these cute things in the department that go on. And he can shed a lot of insight on this. There's a lot of people, when you talk about when a police officer gets fired in one state, how come they can get a job very quickly, very easily in another state? What's the deal with that? Here we go. So he's going to answer that. And he's going to answer, it's like a lot of sort of open secrets that sort of, this, thin blue line of silence, it's going to break the thin blue line of silence. That's what he's going to do. A lot of just open secrets. These are, and just explain how because I think the problem with, I don't think individual police officers are bad. I don't have animosity towards an individual officer. I think, it's like the system that they're trying to work in is troublesome. It's difficult to work in. And so, you're trying to, work in this, and you're trying to work for reform. And so he actually, he can provide a lot of insight. He actually doesn't believe in defunding. He doesn't believe in abolishment. But he does believe in police reform, and he can provide like huge insight. He actually was very good to speak to with regards to defunding, because his whole issue was, if we defund the police, it's going to affect the lower ranking officers. The brass at the top are going to be fine. They're going to be A-okay. And I was like, wait, what? And it makes sense, because he was explaining the hierarchy, how, the people at the top of these, the hierarchy for police officers, they're okay. And they're not going to be affected, by policy changes as much as the lower ranking officers. And so he had a lot of stuff. I interviewed him months ago, and I want to interview him again because I want him to repeat the same talking points. I didn't have as many followers that many months ago. So so I want him to repeat all of these talking points. And if you're on TikTok, it's OfficerASH on TikTok. I actually was banned from TikTok today. So I had, let me just go into that. While we're waiting for Officer Austin Handel, let me talk about why I was banned on TikTok. So I was banned on TikTok. Yesterday, I went to an anti-vax rally. There were Trump supporters there. There was that anti-mask, anti-lockdown. And I went there with Crackhead Barney. Crackhead Barney is amazing. If you're on Instagram, go check her out. She's awesome. And so we troll people. So we make comedy. And she trolled them and she got arrested. I didn't get arrested. She did. Now I made TikToks of her getting arrested, and I made TikToks of live streams of us trying to find which precinct she was at, because the NYPD shuffles protesters around precincts. It's kind of frustrating. So I waited. So we finally, me and Be Happy for Once, we located her at the precinct. Went there and we live streamed out and stood outside with a whole bunch of people until they released her. And then once they released her, I made a video of it, and we went and I did a live stream. Now, here's the problem. Here's where I got canceled, because she is a Black woman, and as a political statement, she was wearing blackface. So she's gone to rallies in whiteface, in greenface, in redface. Now she's doing in blackface. This is, provocateur moment. So all of my videos were reported and taken down for hate speech, because they thought she was a white girl doing blackface. So she is a Black woman that was doing blackface as a political statement. She's a comedian, performance artist. So all of my videos of her arrest, trying to find her at the precincts, and her release were taken off of TikTok, and I was banned on TikTok, which is insane. So it was garbage. So it was so I, it's like I go to post something on TikTok today and my account's post banned, which is garbage. It's awful. It's unacceptable. And I think it's kind of ridiculous to me that, there's this sort of woke mob, and I like to say that the woke mob doesn't show up at protests. They don't throw down on bail funds. They're not doing work to help, raise awareness, boost the platforms of marginalized voices. They're not doing any of that. They're just saying, oh, this is problematic. I think the people that are involved in protests and doing things are, if someone wanted to have a dialogue with me, they could have a dialogue with me about it. But here's the thing. She's a Black woman. If the Black community has a problem with her in blackface, if the Black community has a problem with Crackhead Barney and doing blackface, they're welcome to have that conversation with her. I call it an intra-communal conversation. It actually has nothing to do with me. It's actually none of my business what the Black community thinks. I know my place. So the only people I try and speak to with my activism and with my platform is trying to speak to other white people, and I don't speak for Black people. I don't speak for any other group than this straight white males. So that's the thing. So that's who came for me was just everyone else that wanted to deem this problematic. And I think it's insane. I just think it's ridiculous. Because it's one thing if I had said something that was problematic, if I had done something that was deemed problematic, that would, I can take responsibility for that. That's on me. That's my bad. However, I was making videos documenting the arrest of a black woman who's a protester and securing her release and documenting her release from the 61st precinct of Brooklyn. That's not problematic. That's probably the least problematic thing I could be doing. So just it kind of hurt my brain today. I'm getting kicked off of TikTok because the woman in my video was wearing blackface. She's a Black Lives Matter activist. She's a fierce Black Lives Matter activist. She's been on the front lines of protests for the past year. She's been outspoken. Everyone in New York on the who does activism stuff, they know exactly who she is. The NYPD knows exactly who she is. So for me to get canceled by the association of her is sort of just weird. You know what? Like, I made a video of her arrest by the NYPD and her getting out of jail, and I'm getting canceled for that. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, my afternoon, yesterday afternoon was dedicated to getting her out of jail. You know what? I wanted to stay at this rally and make comedy videos. I'm a comedian. Whether or not you think I'm funny, um, I want to make. So I didn't get to really like make comedy videos with the people at that rally. Oh, hair. So yeah, hate the haters of anti-hate. So it's like it was just friggin' weird. It was just weird. And like when stuff like this happens, I like to, I can't really act like, oh, I'm so big and bad. Like, it just rolls off me because I'm just, Teflon. I mean, that stuff does affect me. I am, I do have a very fragile ego. So I am sort of sensitive to that. So it did kind of, it affected me today. So I was like in bed all day, just being like, what the hell? I really didn't have the energy to do anything. And I was sort of like, it sort of sucked the energy out of me. Just on top of that, yesterday was just very taxing dealing with that in and of itself. So yeah, it was just it's very interesting. I don't think like I'm canceled. And I think, and it's funny, like there's a conservative friend that I have a dialogue with, and we have a continuing dialogue, and he's like, oh, welcome to the right. The woke mob came for you. And I was like, if anything, this pushes me further to the left. I'm going further to the left. I think that we should look at each other as, a comrade in arms. We are your comrade in the fight against the financial elites. Everyone is your potential comrade in the fight for the, you should be, it's like, why should you be nice to, to Black people? Because they're your fight, and, your comrade in arms. Treat them that way. Why should you be nice to marginalized people? Because they're your comrade in arms, against, the financial elites. So it's, so that, that's, if anything, this incident is pushing me further to the left and not the right. I'm not being pushed. I'm not going to because I think it's funny to me when people are like, oh, I got, the woke culture was too much for me, so I became a conservative. It's like, why? Why'd you become you just abandon your thoughts on history and history as a class struggle and class consciousness, all that, so it was just funny to me. So it's like, no, I'm gonna, so it's, if anything, it's like, I'm like, I feel like we need to push past the identity, and look at everything as a class struggle. Because it's, it's very easy to do that. It's because I feel like we get wrapped up within identity and not within class consciousness. And, there's this, there's a lot I could say about that. And, half of which, what, I'm not qualified to be saying. So, yeah. So anyone that's following me on Instagram, what, if you're looking at my Instagram live, go to Twitch, go to my bio, go click on my Twitch or my YouTube, and you can see me live. And I'm about to go. I'm about to click off here, and you just see my live on Twitch and YouTube. It's in my bio. Just click the link. So yeah. Ooh, okay. Mad respect for helping her out. Thank you. Okay, he says he's getting on. Who's he coming in here? we go. Wait. Okay, I'm trying to get my boy Austin. He says he's trying to get on right now. Hold on. Just going to get guiding him into here. I have to let him into the studio. Sorry about this. This freezes so much. So I'm waiting on Austin to come into my live. So I'm waiting for him to enter the studio. Hold on a second. So wait, where are you? Where are you, Austin? Banners, where is he? Oh, sorry, we're experiencing technical difficulties. So for the moment, so. Sorry about this. So, can y'all hear me? Y'all hear me? Oh, Daniel Black, yes. So, Walter, since you saw how the abuse by the police affects Black artists disproportionately, and we were in the car together, why don't you talk about abolition or reform? I'm going to talk about that. But what I'm going to talk about is specifically, I'm going to talk and platform this police officer because he's going to talk about I'm waiting for him to come into the studio. So he is going to discuss he's going to discuss what goes on in the police department. He's going to shed insight on what's going on. So he has a tremendous amount of insight being an officer. He can, there's certain things that go on and he can discuss, give firsthand knowledge of. And I thought it'd be incredibly insightful to have him discussing this with us. And so he can talk a lot about reform. And I mean, it's just his perspective. He and I don't agree on everything, which is fine. However, he does agree that Black Lives Matter. And he agrees that, things need to change and there needs to be proper accountability. And his insight is tremendous with regards to this. So. So I'm just trying to guide him into the room, guide him into the live. So as he sets up his tech. So, but yeah, so I mean, if you're just joining me, I spoke to him, I interviewed him a while ago, and I didn't have as big of a platform at the time that I interviewed him. And I have a bigger platform now, and I want him to repeat the same insight that he gave. It was incredibly insightful, and it was cutting through the talking points. It's very like binary talking points that you're hearing within the media. It is defund. It is abolish. It is Blue Lives Matter. And it's bleh. Not that, the only cops you're listening to are ones that are like Blue Lives Matter. Let's have more cops. I wanted you to listen to a cop that thinks that Black Lives Matter and that there should be proper reform and accountability. So that's why I'm having him on. And I wanted to get it. Speaking to him was tremendously insightful. After speaking to him, I sort of changed my own stance. So my whole thing was that I am, my whole thing is, I'm not a defund person anymore. And I wouldn't say, when I say I'm an abolish person, I want, there is a place for law enforcement within our society, but not in its current state. I want it to be the institution to be torn down and rebuilt. Like I want them to, so if we need to rebuild it. So that's my goal. That's my, that's what I would love to see. I'm not a fan of just giving the police less money. That doesn't seem like a comprehensive plan to me. Like, let's just give them less money. There's more to it. I mean, I want them to, I want us to stop dumping society's problems on the police. I feel like instead of solving homelessness, we dump homelessness on the police. Like, I think conservatives say like, well, the police have they have such a hard job. And they're not wrong. They do have a hard job because we're dumping every problem of society onto them. Mental health, economic inequality, homelessness. If you live in New York City, we're not combating homelessness. We're dumping it onto the police. Most major cities are not solving the problem of police. They're dumping the problem onto the police. Yes, it's like when they say like, oh, the police have a hard job. It's like, you're not wrong. They do have a hard job. You're actually very right. So. Sorry. Technical. And it's a very funny thing also is, they say the main ground zero of the problems that we're having with police, with protesters and everything. They talk about Portland. They talk about this little, autonomous zone in Portland. And as if it's like one block in Portland, and they make it seem like, it's Portland is all autonomous and anarchy and stuff. It's a singular block that they had in Portland that was an autonomous zone. And they're making it, they blow the media like just whoosh. Well, what they don't talk about is the fact that the conservatives have an autonomous zone in Staten Island. In Staten Island, there's like an autonomous zone that's run by conservatives and cops. It's out of the jurisdiction of the sheriff. So it is like, hey, how you doing, man? Welcome.
Doing good, man. How are you? It's good to see you again.
It is lovely to see you, man. Welcome everyone. This is Austin Handel, is Officer Ash on TikTok. So I'm streaming right now to my YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and all of that. Awesome. So yeah, and we spoke a few months ago, and I was like, I'm like this. It was tremendously insightful. I changed some of my own opinions and dialogue with regards to law enforcement reform and police reform. So, as a result of that, and here we are again. I feel like it's still a conversation that we need to have.
Yeah. So, and I also will say before we get like too engrossed, I saw your video when you came to Turning Point here in Georgia. I was upset you didn't tell me you were in Georgia, but I was shocked when they were like just interrupting you, telling you to finish, because like literally just north of Atlanta, we're fighting police corruption, and so it's like you're in downtown asking a question on my behalf. And they were cutting you off saying, oh, no.
Well, no, I flew into Atlanta and I went to Clemson University. That was at Clemson University.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Turning Point USA, Back the Blue rally at Clemson University. And I was using one of your talking points.
Mm-hmm.
When I spoke to Tommy, Lauren, and the other two speakers there, I was using your talking points of like the most of the reformers, police reformers, are former military, because you told me, you're like, because I was like, why is that? And you're like, yeah, military are held to a higher standard, and this, like it's intuitive, like this intuitively, like every person in the military knows that, like, you can get court-martialed for having what, bad credit.
Yep. I mean, well, adultery.
Yeah. Like adultery is not a crime, but in the military, it sure as hell is. So, and yeah, but then when you get into the police force, you were saying that most of you are like shocked. You're like, wait, all the police have civilian law that they're accountable to, but they don't have civilian law because they're not accountable to civilian law. And yeah, one of the guys on there was former military, and he was like, well, the military just handles it internally. Which I was like, that's not the point. He was, and I'm like,
well, the military has so many checks and balances, and then you look in law enforcement, and people, like, a lot of times the argument that I always see is, oh, well, down with the union. Well, in Georgia, we don't have police unions, like you and I discussed last time, which is surprising to most people. Police union, at least in our case, which involves 3 officers of differing ethnicities and backgrounds, all of us, that probably would have saved us. Like, we can't go to the state investigators to ask them to investigate, because as per the law, the department head has to be the one to request them to investigate. But the funny thing about that is he's the one that investigated himself and cleared himself of all wrongdoing. So where do we go? We have nowhere to go, nothing to turn to. And police unions, I don't think always are the answer in any way, shape, or form, because they've been twisted. But it would be nice to at least have someone that we could at least contact, because there's nothing we can do here. It's just crazy.
Well, yeah, because right now in New York City, they're creating like a civilian review board, and the police are obviously upset about that. So it's a civilian review board, and because the funny thing is, we were talking about internal affairs, and cinematically, all of us like, oh, internal affairs. In your former department, internal affairs is a full-time police officer that is moonlighting. Like, he's the guy that was, he's the man or woman that was on your ship.
He was it's someone that you see every day. It's someone that's right down the hall. That's it was the
kicks off his hat and puts on the internal affairs hat. He's like,
and remember that this is a city that is only 10 years old. It formed out of a section of Atlanta. And so it's a smart city, as per what they say. This is the same police chief that's been there ever since it founded 10 years ago. Back before this, they had 3 deputies for this area. Now they have like 70, 80 police officers. And so now you have an internal affairs unit that is essentially just the detectives, which is just ridiculous. There's no takeaway. There's no like step back. There's no separation, because like in our case, we're speaking out against the chief. Well, the chief just tells them what to say. I mean, the chief will come in and say, well, this is the finding I want you to have. Something you may remember is one of the officers that left this department contacted me after I was interviewed on the radio. And he used to be one of the first lieutenants there ever was at this police department. And he contacted me and said, hey, what they did to you guys, they did to me years ago. And I said, oh, that's crazy. And so we started talking. And he said that, funny enough, he had a letter from the military that said he was at drill. The department wanted to get rid of him for whatever the reason. The chief didn't like him. The person that we spoke out against didn't like him. And so the chief said he was a liar. He wasn't at drill. Well, he showed up with a letter from his lieutenant colonel, his commanding officer, that said, hey, he was at drill. And the chief said, nah, untruthfulness, goodbye, and fired him. Well, essentially, he resigned right before they were firing him. He was under investigation at the time for untruthfulness. And so essentially what that means is the chief can just determine if you're a liar regardless of the evidence you have.
Yeah.
And if that's what they're doing with internal issues, imagine what, again, like we've discussed, like what they're doing to the public.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there is nuance to every area. I mean, I'm in New York City and I've been to Trump rallies. I've listened to the head of the police union, Pat Lynch. I've listened to him talk, and his rhetoric never changed. Like when you listen to the rhetoric of the police, the heads of the police unions, at the time of George Floyd up till now, the rhetoric has not shifted. They were not, there was not, because there was no they weren't even pretending, like, oh, let's extend this olive branch and maybe have it be like a fake olive branch. It was like, we're not kneeling with you. We're not going to pretend. Their rhetoric was always inflammatory. It was harsh. It was unyielding. And it was, and they are sort of the gatekeepers for reform. And I mean, like with their union, they do the same thing whenever they are under fire. What they do is it's classic union moves. They do a work stoppage. I mean, New York City takes in a fair amount of revenue through parking tickets. They just went, hey, how about we don't collect money from tickets for a day? And then, because obviously the city relies on that revenue. Yep. And they just go, okay, sure. They do. And I mean, as a union, they are one of the most powerful unions. I mean, hands down. And
almost internationally. I mean, because the police department there is just world renowned. I mean, it is. And that doesn't mean that there's not corruption issues. That just means that they are, they train departments around the country, around the world. And they have a $1 million tech lab just for technology crimes and all kinds of stuff, things that other departments only dream of. To imagine that, again, that the system is so flexible in some areas of the country for not just for disciplinary actions, but for or internal reviews, but for like laws, like collecting parking tickets just because is just asinine. It's just crazy.
And
the shouldn't be able to be bent at all.
Yeah. So, and no, it was interesting with that event, the Turning Point USA event. Like, to their credit, to Turning Point USA's credit, they're actually very good at keeping people out that are like trying to troll them and mess with them. I was actually like, you know what? Like, I know what I'm doing, and hats off to you, because the person that was, when you ask a question, there is someone holding your microphone. They can just yank it. Like, they don't need to cut the power. They're just like, yep. And that's the end of that. And so, and you're not allowed to bring professional equipment in there. So it was a whole thing. And it was just the basic same talking points that you've heard, from, the pro police movement and everything. It's all like, they have a hard job, we gotta respect the cops and, shine their boots and stuff like that. And we're just not shining their boots hard enough, poor them. But yeah, no, I used your talking points. That's a lot of my insight has come from you, a police officer,
Well, and I was again dumbfounded, because we're talking like, and some of those people were not from Georgia, and you were pretty much discussing an issue that's homegrown, that's not even 10 minutes north of there, 15 minutes north of there, and they didn't want to hear it, and like they didn't want to let you finish, and that's what really got me, is you didn't really get enough time to even finish your question. I was just like, I mean, come on, like, he's literally asking for someone like homegrown, but you people aren't even from here. And
and I think they were like being patient with me because I was dressed. I was wearing a Blue Lives Matter shirt, Blue Lives Matter hat. Like I had started off the my question saying like, I was actually at Capitol Hill on January 6th, and it was terrible the way they treated those Capitol Hill officers, which I wasn't lying. Like if you knew who I was, but I was, it was like, I was, in an equivocating sort of in the sense of the word, I was there. So it was, but it was an interesting event. And, I think, and
it's just, I think what it shows, it just goes to show is our country is in such an interesting turning point. Like essentially turning point USA. We are at such a serious point where we can make some critical change and like for the better. And again, as you know, and as we've discussed when the first time we ever got on the phone together was, you and I have differing political views, but that doesn't mean that we don't see eye to eye on this issue, which is the fact that there is a serious concern. There are things that need to be changed. And when I was studying criminology in college, when I took police deviance, I was all for, it can't be that bad, or, oh no, they're, benefit of the doubt. And then I worked at one department, and I ended up helping the state government investigate that police chief. And then I went to this department, and then I ended up, helping to investigate him, with everything that we're doing now with multiple news agencies and with, everything that we're trying to speak out against, and end up being victimized by those same people. It's just crazy. But, some updates for you, I think, since we last spoke was now I was appointed the vice chair of the Lamplighter Project, which is a police whistleblowing nonprofit. We help to change policies to write ethical whistleblowing policies for police officers around the country. We speak to police officers around the country seeking help to speak out against corruption. So I've spoken to officers around the country, some of which involve some very high profile crimes that the department may have committed and that they did not want to be a part of. And so they were victimized, and some involve very, small employee related matters that, like one girl being written up for trying to do the right thing. And so it's really kind of crazy looking back all the stories I've heard, but it echoes across the nation. And it's not just an East Coast thing. It's not just a West Coast thing. It's not a big department, small department thing. You have a police chief in West Virginia who's telling young ladies that they need to have sex with him to keep their daughters out of jail. Former police chief. And then you have like our case that you know very well, I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit, but then you have like, you go out to, or up north, and you go like up towards Ohio, and you have a young police officer who's sexually assaulted by a detective, and then they indict her and arrest her saying that she lied about the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, there's another one that was very egregious that happened in New York. It was like really gross that they swept this under the rug. And it was two officers. They both had sex with her while she was in custody. And she said they raped me. Like I was sexually assaulted. And they were like, no, it was consensual. But it was like, she's in police custody. There's no consensual sex under police custody with two men. And then the problem with the judge had was that there's no law on the books saying that your police can't have consensual sex with someone while they're in custody. I mean, hey, there's no, where does it say I can't?
Yeah, well, just common sense about, even just the idea of that culture of if people are sexually assaulted, like that, people always will say, like it is written even in Georgia law that like if you're in a position of authority that you can't do that. That's crazy that it's not up there, but it's common sense. It's common sense. Like if you're like in our case involved not your boss, but your boss's boss and a lieutenant coming down to officers demanding that they send him nude pictures of themselves for extra jobs, for money, for promotions, or for commendations that will essentially lead to promotions, for special positions and all kinds of stuff. And then we found out he was removed from being in charge of the Christmas for Kids program, found out that he picked up a kid behind the Best Buy and took him home to live with him. I mean, like,
oh, wait. Oh, that's the new development?
That's just something that even I think that because you and I discussed, there's so many details in our story that like that we
tell me that one. It's not surprising. Like that's
well, exactly. And so
his behavior.
Well, and it's just so it's so crazy because like there are so many different things in our cases, you know, it's hundreds of pages, but you look at like and like I told the news and like I'll tell you again, I don't care if we win a lawsuit. It has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do with anything like that. It just has to do with, you know, fixing this and letting other officers know that you can speak out, that you're going to be okay, that you can fight back, and that, you know, the country's at a turning point, that we can change this. But the details of that story is, this lieutenant, you know, drove behind the Best Buy one night and he found a kid that was homeless back there that was right at the age of 17, so about to become a young adult. And as soon as he was getting off shift that morning, he was the night shift commander at that time, he went by in his police car, picked him up, took him home, and the kid moved in with him for months. And then he joined the Explorer program, which explains why he was always taking him to the Explorer program, was because he was in the Explorer program. And he was living with him. And come to find out, when we spoke out and when I was on the news, I get contacted by the kid's old ex-girlfriend that told me all of this and told me how, yes, you know, he was picked up. I went to go pick him up from this guy's house several times, from the lieutenant's house, and he would scowl at me and he wouldn't let me in the house. He didn't want me there. Like, and all this just absolutely crazy stuff. The bottom line is, no kid should be picked up and live with like that and just be taken to live with this police officer that's homeless. Like, what an idiot. Like, that's obviously wrong.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, well, here's the problem is like, let's just give the guy the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't having an inappropriate sexual relationship. Let's just take that off the table. Mm-hmm. I think the problem that I think that right and left can sort of get behind is that we're dumping these problems onto the cops. Like, this is a social worker issue. You know, that kid being homeless and needing a home is an issue that a social worker is very equipped to handle, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that the cop had the best of intentions and that he wasn't sexually assaulting him. All right. It shouldn't be the cop's job to do this. And I've actually had personal experiences where the cops, you know, would pick someone up and try and show mercy. You know, I was working at some place, and, you know, in Manhattan before the pandemic, and the cops, you know, picked this kid up for drunk and disorderly, and, you know, dumped him at this place saying, hey, just go here and get your head right. And it was the wrong place for we had to deal with them, and it was a fucking nightmare. And I was like, and we weren't social workers. We weren't this. They were just being like, hey, go here and, you know, get your life together. And we're like, fucking no, this is not where you come when you're drunk and semi-homeless, unhoused, and to get your shit together. Like, no, absolutely not. And then we had to deal with like a very violent drunk, person between like 18 and 20, and stuff. And we're like, when we found out that the police dumped him here, we were like, wait, what? So, and but here's the problem. I don't really blame the cops. The problem is like, there's not a social services system that can, that can, take this kid. There's nothing set up. And
I think that, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think that what happens is that we hide behind the term discretion, right? And so we say, oh, the police officers have discretion. And so then sometimes people, especially power hungry people, want to believe that officers should have a lot of discretion, a lot of options. Mm-hmm. And the world is a very interesting and crazy place sometimes. I've seen the best of humanity and the worst of it. And so I can say that, sometimes you need a lot of options. That's why some cops carry all kinds of things on their belt. One of a new less lethal option is, it looks like a TV remote and it shoots like a Batman, like batarang that ties up people's legs. Like, that's a whole nother less lethal option.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's a real thing. Police officers I'll have to look up the name of it, but
I want that.
Well, exactly. Well, and that's the thing is that, and I actually presented that to our department and tried to get them to get it, and they wouldn't even try it. But the point being is that, sometimes there's a need for a lot of options, but sometimes there's not. And so what we do is we hide behind the term discretion, which is really another, almost becomes synonymous with laziness of the government. We don't want to develop out these programs for social workers, for proper mental health in our country, which is at a crisis right now. for, people to have a system of places that they can go and talk to people and really deal with these things. We just put it all on, a lot of times, on police officers and say, okay, make the right choice. And they're not going to make the right choice all the time. They're not going to make it even, I would say even the majority of the time, because there are so many options that are vastly available that they don't know.
Yeah. And like, it's, for instance, like, the homeless problem within New York City, the homeless are shuffled around. They're basically like, they're sleeping in one area and the cops are like, well, you can't sleep here. You have to go sleep over there. And they're basically just, I mean, it's not solving anything. You're just basically saying, this is the nice part. This is like the nice area. Go the industrial area.
Well, and there's plenty of times, like when I was a police officer, when I was on nights, I'd be driving around. If I saw someone that was like, maybe even, it didn't matter how old they were, if they wanted to ride somewhere, like a courtesy ride, I'd be like, oh, hey, where are you going? They'd be like, oh, I'm going 2 exits up the highway. I'd be like, well, do you want to ride? And I'll just take you there real quick. But there's plenty of officers that don't want to pull over and talk to anybody. They'll see that person walking and just keep on going. And so, like, the fact that, we have just such a vast, or diverse, environment, and that police officers can be a totally different personalities and do totally different things, shows that we need to be very careful with how we approach the future, but we need to be willing to make serious critical change. And also, thank you to Thunderbird in your stream. He's right. It is called a bull rap.
I'm like, I want to talk about this, but I'm like, this is kind of weird that I'm like, oh, forget police reform. I want the bat bowler round.
The bowler. Oh, I know. I tried so hard, man. They were considering it, and they were like, even right when I left, they're like, oh, we're still considering it. Like, it could replace maybe a taser. At our department, we didn't carry any kind of stick or any kind of like a baton or anything like that. We just had, our taser, our gun, our ammo, and then like, our cups and stuff like that, and a tourniquet.
Okay, so let me ask something. How many times have you, went to pull out your taser and you were like, and it was just your gun, and you're like, oh, whoops.
Never. And I can tell you personally, I was shocked when I saw that. We've talked about it a lot, and like, it was so interesting to me whenever she's like, oh, I'm going to tase you, and she has a gun pointed at this person. You train to have them on separate sides of your body for muscle memory, because first thing that goes when you have a lot of adrenaline pumping is fine, motor control. And so like, that's why you can't do very fine movements when you're like still hyped up. So when you're in a life or death situation and everything, or just fight or flight. And that's exactly what she was in. This shouldn't get confused. Like, like she wasn't wrestling with somebody or something. It was just, oh, taser, gun, taser, gun. That's all it should have been. And the fact that, she had a gun pointed at this person as the taser was just sad. It shows a lack of training. It shows a lack of follow-up. And I would,
but here's the problem when they talk about training is she's someone that trains other people.
She was a field training officer. I know.
Yeah.
And that's something that we discussed at our department several times with people that were creating this new program. So across the country, typically you have FTOs, which are field training officers. Our department tried something new that was called a PTO, which is like a police training officer. It kind of focused on the adult learning model. So instead of like, you have a checklist of things you need to do by the end of in the field training, like arrest somebody or do something. Every day you wrote a journal about what you did and what you need to improve upon, and then it got evaluated by the command staff. And so I do think that's a better way to train people, because we are adults and we need to treat people like adults. And there's just some people that you're going to look at these journals and you're going to be like, okay, this person can't even write reports, or, oh, this person looks like they have a confidence issue. It reveals more about their inner character than anything else. So we did have a good model on that, but like, that's a great example again, is that you look at people like this and you're like, how does this even happen? This shouldn't happen.
So the other thing that was, insightful in the last time is you had spoke about, what are they incentivizing? Now, so first off, using time to, give out stickers or whatever within, and just, for community relations, that was not incentivized. You could not, there's nothing you can put that in a report. They're not paying you to do that. They're not paying you to do that. The process is not incentivized. None of it is. Yeah.
Well, and we discussed how a lot of departments use productivity points instead of quotas, right?
Yeah.
And so like
for our audience, so if you ask the cops, they go, well, we don't have quotas anymore. What are you talking about? We don't have quotas. But like, no, they do have quotas. It's called productivity points.
And the funny thing about that is that, again, it is a better system than a quota, but like we discussed, it can be abused because you'll have officers that will be lazy all month and not do anything. They'll have no productivity points, which you can get 1 point for patrolling a parking lot or 1 point for stopping a car. But if you stop a car, make an arrest, and you have like 2 citations in that arrest, that's 4 productivity points. I mean, so it is incentivized in a way that whether they realize it or not, that it makes it look like you're doing more. So that's why at the end of the month, a lot of times you'll see all these police officers pulling people over. It's because a lot of times these are the people that were lazy all month that didn't do anything, and they're trying to get their points up all of a sudden. If people could have almost no points and not be fired for it, but it does show you who's doing something out there. And so, they'll look at that for commendations, for officer of the quarter and stuff like that. But there wasn't one for giving stickers out. I would just say I was patrolling a parking lot, but I'm out passing out stickers, meeting people and stuff like that. And plenty of other officers did that, but there was no incentive to that. If anything, we lost out on the opportunity to make it look like we were working really hard.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, so yeah, you had spoken about that. We had spoken about, so the productivity points and how they'll just, and it's like, wait, got to make, not quota,
gotta look like I'm doing something this month. Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense because like there was plenty of times that we had plenty of officers that didn't do anything all night. They would sleep all night in a parking lot somewhere, maybe go to a call. There was plenty of times where I was rushing to a call that was like someone maybe like involving a gun, a fight. I'm rushing to get there and I'm coming from across the city. And there's an officer that's right down the street that's like slow rolling on the map to get there because he wants me to get there first so that way he doesn't have to do anything. And like there was plenty of times where at the end of the month looking at our quotas where I would have hundreds of more calls to service than officers, and I worked the same amount of days that they did that month. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't be possible, but the system is broken. It's very broken. And speaking of tasers, again, like we spoke about before, we talked about there was an officer that was well known for tasing everybody, right? But he was also involved in our case with that lieutenant and sending photos and getting all kinds of benefits. Well, like I told you, he was known for tasing people monthly at least. And I told you, even though that we had the same amount of arrests in my entire career, I've never tased a soul. I've never had to. I've been able to talk to people and get them in handcuffs without having to do that. But that guy, even though we spoke out and he was found to be involved in this little ring, and that lieutenant was allowed to retire and move to Florida, he was given the new canine position that just opened up, of course, because he helped the chief investigate himself. The chief asked him, hey, what photos do you have proof of what happened? And so he sent everything to him. And then all of a sudden, even though the chief just discovered that he was involved in a quid pro quo, practically racketeering crime, here's the new canine position. Officer that tases everybody. Because we're going to give him a dog now. Does that make sense?
Woo!
Like, and it's just crazy. And then the other canine officer that they chose, without going into too many personal details, he just wasn't a good choice. He most likely won't be in law enforcement for very much longer, but due to personal reasons. But he wasn't a good choice. But the reason, again, that they chose him is unknown to everybody because he was pretty much not hireable in any other state. He came back to Georgia to get a job in policing here, and that same lieutenant hired him because of his sexual orientation, because he was not straight. So he was denied being hired at our department several times before the lieutenant was in charge of that.
So the scandal, for our audience, it sounded like it sounded one of these things where like it just sounded so cartoonishly absurd that if you hadn't if I had just read about it, I'd be like, no. So the scandal basically was the lieutenant was trading, it's like send me a dick pic, sexually harassing other officers, and he would send dick pics and suggesting picks and whatever, and you would get preferential treatment.
And you would get commendations. And so then there's so in our case, there's two officers that, even though there's one of us that was threatened, and then you have people like me who I just was never going to be caught alone with the guy. It just wasn't going to happen. And so he knew I wasn't going to play that kind of game with him. And so I got targeted. Because I was not going to. And so we have messages where he got in charge of hiring after that, where he's talking about, oh, do you think that this guy will be okay with the occasional taint pick? Talking about hiring people. Like, what? And rating guys on how they look, scales 0 to 10. I ran into a 3-story house fire and they said, oh, you didn't carry the woman out the right way. No commendation for you. But the officer that went to Utah with the lieutenant, that same lieutenant that month, got officer of the quarter. He was gone almost the whole quarter. Our system is so broken. You can do everything right. You can bust your butt, and it's just ripe for abuse. It's absolutely right.
Here's the other thing. So basically, that lieutenant he left, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. He resigned, retired, and went to Florida.
So here's the deal. So here's the thing. So there's no unless it's in the news, unless his incident is in the news, when he goes to another state, he can get hired as a cop. Because they
because his certification is intact. His law enforcement certification is intact. They never notified post the Peace Officer Council about to investigate his certification. Why? Because he resigned. Even though he resigned under investigation, they didn't even report it as he resigned under investigation. They just said he resigned. And then you have officers like me who they said that I lied about something, but they never really told me what I lied about. And then they said, oh, you're terminated. So. And the funny thing about that is Walter, that we kind of discussed, but we can go kind of more into it now because we're not just trying to record segments. Is I didn't have a choice, because if I were to resign, I would never have been able to testify in court again. Because if I were to testify in court, any attorney, if I made an arrest at another police department or something, could say, oh, well, he was fired for untruthfulness, Judge. We can't trust his testimony.
Yep.
Well, the funny thing about that is by me staying and fighting through it, and still to this day fighting, and always from the very beginning saying, look, I never lied to a soul, and having evidence to support me, and by never giving in to them and never just being, resigning and moving to another police department, I can still testify in court, because there is still always I can always be like, no, that's not what happened. Actually, I told the truth, but I was speaking out against corruption, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting situation that you end up in, because had I have resigned, my job, any future in law enforcement, or even just testifying in court at all, would have been just gone, absolutely gone, no chance.
Yeah, so you had to get kicked out in disgrace. And then now I'm still fighting with the Peace Officer Council about my certification, all because they said I lied about speeding in my patrol car. But again, let's talk about okay, you're saying I lied and you have no evidence, no proof, and I'm again have proof saying otherwise. Where you're saying that, oh, I lied about speeding my patrol car. We're talking about a sexual predator, Walter. Oh, sexual predator that's on the beach in Florida. Who knows what he's doing? No. This shouldn't be possible. Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, with the Catholic priest scandal, it's like they were just allowed to get transferred.
Well, funny enough, this same guy, the same lieutenant, left the Catholic school to become a priest right before he graduated, and then became a cop again for the second time in Georgia. Funny enough, he left the Palm Beach seminary in Florida and came up here to become a cop again. Strange how right before graduation he left being a priest. It's almost like he maybe realized that he may be able to, come in closer contact with children through the Christmas for Kids program he one day created, instead of being a priest.
And it's like that quote, like life doesn't imitate art, it imitates bad TV. It's like, I mean, this is like if you were trying to write a cop show, this would be the worst script ever. Like you would look at this, executives would look at the script and be like, wait, so he wanted to be a Catholic priest who's in seminary school, then he went to be a cop so he could, sexually molest the other officers. Get out of here with this. That's ridiculous. If someone told me, like, the fact that you're an officer that served under him and endured this, I'm like, oh, there's credibility. And like, if someone just said, oh, I heard about this department, I would be like, oh, that's just some, traveler's tale nonsense, because it just sounds so, it's absurd. And then wait, there was another officer in your department that he was in the previous place he was in. He had stolen a bunch of guns from evidence, and he was allowed to transfer to your department.
Yeah, and so funny enough, so the officer I was speaking about, and I don't know if my internet connection is bad or if yours was going out for a second, but let me know.
I can hear you. I'm good.
Okay, good. So so that he's the major. He's actually up. Him and another major right now could become the deputy chief of police, because the deputy chief finally announced his resignation after all of this BS, just like last month. And so now he could become the deputy chief. Well, funny thing about that, Walter, is where he was deputy chief before at the Douglasville Police Department in Georgia, where he was deputy chief, he was found to be in possession of 50 guns, a sniper rifle, a silencer, and a pair of brass knuckles. 50. And again, like, let's just be clear for the audience here. 50 guns out of evidence. And when they asked him, they said, well, why? One, he said he didn't remember how he got them all. But two, they said, well, why? He said, because I was making a gun memorial. He was playing arts and crafts, Walter. He was making a gun memorial for the police department.
I mean,
he didn't tell anybody.
Who among us has not, made a gun memorial at least once in our life? I mean, that's sort of a rite of passage, you're with your teenage friends, you're drinking a beer behind the 7-Eleven. You're like, let's steal 50 guns from evidence and make a gun.
And then you use the brass knuckles to hold them up.
And the brass knuckles. But why do you even need the brass knuckles for? I feel like brass knuckles are something that did he steal ninja stars as well? It's
and that's the question is, so then they let him resign. Okay. Like, this department goes, you know what? Thank you for your years of service, deputy chief. Goodbye. And so he hightails it to our police department, which just was starting, and comes in as the major over the patrol division. How are you we can't trust him with guns. He can't even have a key to the evidence locker. Or the armory? Why are we going to trust him with people that carry guns?
Wait, did he steal 50 guns from evidence or from the police armory?
From evidence, but he wasn't trusted at our department with the key to the armory either for that reason. If your evidence locker has 50 guns, that's not one. So this is over. No, yeah, this is over time. He was doing this, over probably like years. Who knows? But the point is,
he was just like, a handgun here, an assault rifle there, this, that, He
was shot. It was Walmart to him. He walked in. He was like, oh, I like that. I like that. And it's just crazy to imagine that, again, he was in charge of people that carried guns. After this, he wrote me up. Saying, because I wore a hat indoors. I didn't know this at the time. I wore a police department hat, and he said, it's not raining outside anymore. You can't wear that in here. So he wrote me up on my thing for wearing a hat. Little did I know that this man was a felon. You have the mafia in here. This is just crazy.
Basically, the thing is that when they want to get rid of you, they can make it real. They can do it really easily. They can say, oh, you wore a hat indoors. Someone said you were speeding. Who said I was speeding? Someone said you were speeding, and that's how they got rid of you. They're like, he wore a hat indoors. He was speeding through a neighborhood. We got a complaint of this, and peace out.
Well, and that's the crazy part, man. Is again, we live in this world that these things are possible. And so what I see talking to officers around the country is that there is a movement. There is plenty of officers that are younger that want to bring this change, and it's not them. It's you try and you try and you try. Walter, I can even tell you, because it's not any of my passwords now. I can even tell you that my password at my police department for my laptop at once upon a time was "Dare to be different." That was my password, and I can tell you that for a fact because I wrote it on a sticky note one day and gave it to IT when my computer was broken. So my point being is that there's officers around this country that want to make a difference, that are especially the younger officers. And the funny thing about that is that every time they try, these older officers are like, nah, or or the older officers attach their names to it. And they're like, oh yeah, look at this guy. And they lift him up higher because they want the credit. And it's just like, our system should be based on credit. It should be based on serving the public. It should be based on just coming to work, doing your job. And that does not involve that you have to arrest people. That does not mean that you have to come in and write tickets for people. That means that you come in and you protect and you serve. That's what you do. You serve. And serving is going around the community, meeting the community, going out. I taught chess to Kingsley Elementary before all this happened. I was teaching kids on my off days in my police uniform to play chess because they asked for someone from the police department. I was the only volunteer, the only one. But then that's what protecting and serving is you go out and you're like, okay, look, where's the opportunities where we can meet, members of our community and make a difference? If you earn the community's respect, in turn, they will not in turn that they will respect you, but you will also learn to respect them and respect everything about them. That includes, how they live, how their means, how they get to and fro, how they want to live their lives, and you'll learn a basic human respect for each other. But when we put ourselves on a pedestal, like we're a country under occupation, like we're almost a military force walking down the street sometimes in some areas, and there's some officers that just walk around like that anyway, then it takes away from the officers that are out there trying to do the right thing, that are trying to be good, that are trying to go out and just make little kids smile, give them a sticker, or make a positive difference by changing a lady's tire in the pouring rain. Like that, that's not in people's job description, but it happens every single day.
Yeah. And and I think, it's like there are cops that want to do good, that there are cops that do nice things for people, that show mercy. I mean, there's, when I was younger, cops had found drugs on me and they're like, put the drugs away. We're looking for guns. If we find a gun on you, you're going in. Just, put that weed back in your pocket. Like, we're looking for guns, and that was like, oh, okay.
Which shows again a want to just get guns off the street, which that's it, regardless of whether it was the right way to go about it or necessarily the perfect way to do that thing. But it still shows again that the basic aspiration of those officers at the time were to get guns off the street, which most people right now, regardless of how you feel about the amendments and everything else, most people would agree that, getting guns off the street and especially out of people that shouldn't have them.
Getting guns off the street and into the hands of the major of the patrol division.
Apparently, if you're in Georgia, apparently that's allowed. So, and you can just live your happy life, and it's no surprise to me. It really, looking back now, it's no surprise to me.
Yeah. And then, it's funny because we'd spoken about there's defunding the police, there's abolishing the police, and you don't fall in any of those camps. And you had said that, defunding the police is going to affect the lower tier officers, and it's not going to affect the higher ups at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something that I ended up on several interviews or several podcasts talking about, was not just about defunding the police, but about that we should audit the police first off. Before we start just pulling money away from everything, let's figure out where our money is actually going. Because what you'll very quickly see is that it goes to payroll. But what you'll also see is that it goes to giving 6% cost of living adjustments to the city manager, has nowhere in the police department, but somehow ends up in the budget, right? Who gets when he's already making $130,000 a year, gets a 6% cost of living adjustment. And why is because they say it's fair because all the officers got a 6% cost of living adjustment. So he deserves a 6% cost of living adjustment. And so what you see very quickly is the inflation of these salaries for higher ups in the city, for city council members, which mind you, again, just like congressmen, representatives, council members are supposed to be members of the community, that their primary salary is something totally different. There's council members out there that draw a salary and live off a salary being a council member, which shouldn't even really be possible, because it's supposed to be that you're trying to be a part of your community. You get augmented salary on top of whatever you're doing in your local community. Because if you're working on doing council member stuff constantly, or as a mayor constantly, you're not actually out with the community every day. So you don't actually see what's going on. But then again, what you actually see is the very first thing that they cut every single time is that 6% cost of living adjustment for officers. I guarantee you that most of the, if actually working with several state legislators, that one of the very first things that police departments did whenever they presented new budgets was they would actually end up getting rid of a 6% cost of living adjustment or a 3%, a 2%, whatever, because that's what the very first thing they want to get rid of, because they want to keep money in their pocket for equipment that officers on the street will never see. We had drones at our department that we weren't allowed to fly. They never came out of the box. Like, we had 3 of them. We used them like once in like 3 years. And then you have night vision goggles that same lieutenant like confiscated up from everybody because they were being misused or something. Like, but the equipment budget is just huge.
So you're not saying let's not defund the police, let's audit the police.
Let's see where the money's going. And let's not even just audit the police, it's audit the local government. Why are people that, like, so you have officers out there that, again, like we talked about, when I started policing, there's a county deputies out there that were making $12 an hour with like no benefits. They had to buy their own body armor, they had to buy their own gun, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like $12 an hour. Okay.
Yeah, $12.
They say, well, it's because of it's cheaper to live there. But then studies show that when we actually did the actual area, we found out it's actually more expensive to live in that certain area that they were policing, where they were getting paid less. And so you have people that are making $12 an hour, and we're going to take away even more from them. And we're going to say, because of all these things that could have been corrected at the upper tiers of command by having proper policies, proper follow-ups, proper hiring procedures, and no negligence on the command's part, we're going to take away your cost of living adjustment that would have essentially brought you to like what, $12.25 an hour. When officers are walking around, like, they have bills piling up on their table, and that's no excuse for them being frustrated at work or for them whatever. But at the same time, we have to audit our local government. We have to. And so if we want to sit here and say, oh, defund the police, that's fine. That's fine. If we want to rearrange the money in the police departments, I guarantee you most police officers would say, cool, let's do that, because they don't know where the money's going in the first place, because they don't see it. The officers aren't the ones seeing it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, because the other thing is, so the city that you were in was a smart city. And so there's a lot of rhetoric now with, there's these they're trying to make every city a smart city. You have big tech lobbyists coming in saying, install this tech and, to, help update the city. And a lot of experts are coming forth and saying, this tech is doing nothing for this city. It's helping, the law enforcement become like more authoritarian. It's becoming more invasive to your privacy, big data, all of that. It's not doing anything. It's not helping the city get better. It's not helping traffic. It's not, it's doing. Well, yeah.
You have a lot of local governments that are misusing that anyway. So like our city was a smart city, right? We had a traffic room that someone could go in and operate the traffic in the area, like all the signals and stuff. It was never used. It was never used. We had an entire traffic room, an entire traffic system throughout our city. It was never used. And so it raises the question again of, why are we misusing funds? But then you see, oh, well, the reason we're misusing funds is because of the grants. They want the smart city grants. And so they need smart city systems to be able to apply for the smart city grants from the federal government. The systems we were using in our patrol cars were Windows XP. We got a robbery in progress. Officers sometimes had to put it into Google Maps while we were driving. And then these same officers have the audacity to pull people over for hands-free, for being on your phone while distracted driving. Well, we're driving to robberies, like, oh shoot, Google, where is that gas station? Like, but again, it shows negligence on the part of local government. The officers, there's not a thing that we could do to be like, hey, we want better dispatch systems. They just weren't going to pay for them.
Okay. All right. And then, so basically it's not defund, it's audit. And because I think I've sort of come around to a lot of things that I would say, like, I'm I think, there is a place for law enforcement within society. However, what we have now is there's no place for it. It's not working for everyone. My thing is, I would say abolish, but like tear down the institution and rebuild it.
Well, and something that again, because what I think that we're never going to see is the institution tear itself down. We're not going to see that. But what we will see and what we can keep arguing for is positive change. Something that we just did again, and again for everybody, our case involves officers that don't just look like me. One of my best friends that I talk to every single day just about in our case that is also suing for discrimination is an African-American officer who we talk about all of this almost every day. And he gives me all the interesting information out there. And then I hear from people inside the police department all the time. So he keeps very close key. He won't tell me what's going on in the department because he still works there. But he doesn't need to. There's plenty of officers there that still do because they want to speak out. They want to bring about positive change. But something that we talk about a lot is like what we just signed. We signed the open letter to Congress from police whistleblowers, begging Congress again as a whole to come about and support whistleblowing law and legislation. It just doesn't exist right now. Like they say, oh, well, there's the whistleblower law. Okay, well, where is it protecting us right now in our case? The fact that there is not, like, that the government isn't already afraid and have policies and procedures in place to allow people to actually protect good cops that are trying to speak out and report wrongdoing, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. The fact that my best friend was harassed sexually, but also discriminated against because he was an African-American officer because they accused him of stealing, that's asinine to me. We shouldn't live in a society that this is possible, because it comes back around to, if this is how we're treating each other, what are they doing to the public without us knowing? And so something that we work around, something that we're trying to do again is we work on whistleblower policies and legislation, trying to show model policies for departments to adopt. Because maybe, just maybe, one of the very next things that we're going to see is we're going to create a system that incentivizes people to speak out, not just because whether it's moral or ethics. I have a huge issue sometimes when people will say, well, it's for the greater good that people are that we don't tell the public what's going on. No, absolutely not. I don't care. I don't care. That's an asinine argument. Something that is true to this day is that people need to know what's going on, because how are we going to elect the right officials to deal with the problem if we don't know what's going on? So we need good whistleblowers. We need good legislation and policies and procedures to protect people, not just in law enforcement, but in all industries, to speak out against like these major companies that are creating serious human rights violations. And that's exactly what they should be considered. If you're diminishing the quality of life of other citizens, regardless of whether they're employees or not, it should be considered a human rights violation.
Yeah. And then so then let me see, what else were we so you gotten bounced from this place, and so it's called, so if you leave the department, it's called, if there's notes on your record. So if they put notes on your record, you can't get a job in another state. But if they allow you to just resign, and
that's exactly, again, if they don't just put notes on your record, or they let you just diddy bop down the hallway out of here, then you just people dance down the hallway and disappear, and then they go to another department, they reappear there, and it's crazy. But then they also get to pick and choose what notes go in your file. It's almost like a bad, government corruption movie that you'd see on Netflix. Like, when someone speaks out against some kind of crazy plot, they use these systems against people. And so they will make up things. And when the government's the one writing the narrative and there's no checks and balances from the public to be able to fix that narrative, then we have a problem, because it will never actually know the truth. And the funny part about like our case, you can have the truth on your side, you can have all the evidence, and here we are, almost in a matter of a week or two, it'll be almost a year since I left the police department. And nothing has changed yet. Like we've got, ever since they've lost like 15 officers, the deputy chief has resigned. People don't want to work there. People don't understand how the chief is still there. But the chief isn't in jail yet, even though he committed a crime. That lieutenant is on the beach in Florida, even though he hasn't committed a crime. And you have, again, just like me, plenty of officers turning in their badges to try to do the right thing or to try to just move on to a different place that isn't so toxic.
And so you're saying that, like, if there is a problem with an officer in a department, that it's not in a vacuum, like, because I feel like a lot of times it's the opposition is saying, like, they always make everything's, if they agree with what happened, it's an isolated incident, like, just it's an apple, it's a bad apple, and so, but you're saying, if this is happening within a department, it's because the chief is corrupt. It's because your top, executives, suite is there. There's it's a toxic culture. It's a corrupt culture.
There needs to be proper checks and balances in place with the public, where the public is allowed to review these incidents, where the public is allowed to come in and have a public appointed council or board and actually review use of force incidents, review internal affairs issues, and come in and say, okay, like, no, this is okay or this isn't okay. You shouldn't have people that are stakeholders in the outcome of anyone. And anyone that works at a police department, anyone that works there, the chief is a stakeholder. You are another officer he can put on the street. So if he can find a way and he likes you especially, or he doesn't like you, that can make the difference between whether or not you make it through incidents, and that shouldn't be the case. The public should be allowed to come in almost instantaneously when these things happen and be invited to come in and look at these incidents. Because if not, corrupt people will get away with corrupt things. And that's exactly what's been happening for decades.
Yeah. And then you were also talking about with going through training, they were, through training, they were giving you this, like, they were like, well, hey, I know we got a lot of alphas here.
Yep.
And you were like,
all the time going into training, one of the first things people would always say down at the training facility, which had like departments from around the country, or not around the country, excuse me, around the state. So, you could have like 50 different departments in a room. They'd be like, all right, I know we're all type A personalities. And every time, like we talked about before, I don't identify as a type A personality. And I don't think anyone that identifies as a type A personality should be a cop in the first place. Like, that just makes no sense. If you're here for yourself and only you, then why are you a police officer? Because policing is not what it should be anyway right now. But again, the term cop historically, again, comes from the word constable on patrol. A constable, regardless of how it was twisted throughout history, a constable was supposed to be someone that was a member of the community, like a night watch, like a guy walking down the street checking his own neighborhood. And that doesn't mean that he was right all the time, but it was supposed to be someone that was a stakeholder in the community, someone that cared about the community. And you have these people that are like, oh, I'm a type A personality. Why are you here? Like, go do anything else? Like, why are you in police work of all things?
Yeah.
There's just, type A personalities should not be allowed in law enforcement. But walking into a training center and someone be like, all right, I know we're all type A personalities here, that shouldn't happen.
So if it's on your like Instagram bio, like if you're like self-diagnosing your, if you're like, people self-diagnose, like, oh, I'm so ADD, I'm so, I'm so like,
well, I'm type A. Like, what?
It's like, oh, get the fuck out.
Like, yeah, well, like what? Like, why are you gonna walk into the room and be like, all right, I know we're all here to make a difference positively, but I want everyone to know I'm gonna make the best. Like, what? Like, why? Why are you here? Like, if you have that much effort you want to put into yourself, you should go be an astronaut or something like that. Like, you shouldn't. But that's exactly the point, is that we live in a society where people like that sometimes in some departments, in some areas, thrive. And they make it through these command structures, and they twist the narrative for themselves, and they end up becoming the next chief of police, and it just continues this good old boy system. The public needs to have a better say in police departments and how they operate. It never should be allowed to be like, oh, well, you don't understand because you're not a cop. Like, no. But I am a stakeholder in the community, and by definition, I could be a constable on patrol.
One of the comments from King Owl: "You send the Type A's to space."
well, like again, exactly. Like again, exactly. Go be an astronaut. Go do something else.
Go be an astronaut.
Chris is right. Even astronauts care about helping humanity and furthering space or space development. But again, it shows. It's just we can do better. And like, I don't know if you've seen it, but like something that I thought was again a great statement, but that it was made of all things in Marvel's new show and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where at the end where we have the new Captain America, the phenomenal new Captain America, and he's talking to the senator, and he's like, "Senator, you need to do better." I was just like, I would give. If we weren't involved in the middle of this investigation, I would love to walk into city council and say, "You need to do better." I don't care if you pay this lawsuit. You need to do better.
That was after he took his vibranium Captain America shield.
Right.
Killed. A protest.
Exactly.
Person. In broad daylight. Yeah, he's like, "Hey, you do better."
But
yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, it would be nice.
Again, it's just crazy, man. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like we live in this weird world where, like these elected officials think that they can do whatever, and any elected official that becomes an elected official that thinks that they can't make a positive change is why are you even here? Why did we elect you if you're not going to make the community better?
Yeah.
In our case, we've contacted all the city council members, we've contacted the mayor, and they just won't do anything. We've had plenty of citizens walking in demanding the chief resign, and he's still there.
And what did the chief do? The chief is just complicit in covering all of this up.
Yeah, and the chief knew about it. The chief was found, like he had gotten reports from an officer back in I guess now maybe 7 years ago, or maybe it was 4 years ago, I can't recall, but the officer came out and was like, "Yeah, this lieutenant came up to me and said, oh, that officer is going to make it onto the SWAT team because he sucks D better than you do." And then he reported this to the chief, and the chief was like, "Oh, it was just locker room talk." And like, okay, but then here we are years later. How'd you have actually investigated it? And again, and the major that stole all those guns, the major's the one that cleared him and said, "It's he said, she said. There is nothing wrong with this." Well, had you have actually investigated it, maybe actually looked into this guy's personality or kept him under tabs, you would have realized that, yeah, actually he was victimizing people, that he was sexually harassing and assaulting people, that he was a predator. But they didn't. And the chief, whenever he was asked about, whenever he first made a statement as to whether or not he knew, like he was like, "Oh, I've never been made aware of any complaints of that nature about that."
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, and it's like whenever someone's getting Me Too'd, there's always this satellite of it's people that knew about this, that were co-signing it, that were enabling this. Yeah.
Well, and when I was interviewed by Jane Turner, who's with the Whistleblower News Network, she mentioned to me that exactly what they, the first play in the book for the government when it's corruption is always the same. It doesn't matter what political background, doesn't matter what industry. It's always the same. You discredit the person. You discredit the whistleblower. You do whatever you can to throw it out there and say, "Oh, he said, she said, oh, that person's not competent. Oh, that person's terrible," or "Oh, whatever," because the government has the ability to do that more quickly than a private individual. And so these people end up just outed with no voice, and people just believe at first glance that these people are bad people because some people blindly trust the government. Mm-hmm. Like our Constitution was not written to blindly trust the government. And it never, at no point does it say anything about like that. Actually, it says the opposite. It says that there should be checks and balances. It says that we should follow up, that we should check and investigate, and we should update as we, even the amendments, like obviously, like how we determine and interpret them based on, as time goes on. It says that we should have checks and balances as per, like the perception of people at the time. And we live in a world that people are like, "Oh, no, the government's they're trying. They're good people.
They're doing their best.
They're good people." Like,
I think what's happening is the last few years, people are sort of waking up to the fact that we've sort of been asleep at the wheel for everything. You know, and the people that were not asleep at the wheel were like some of like the worst people. You didn't want them at the wheel. You know, it was actually sort of, you know, déclassé to sort of talk about politics, you know, within a cocktail party conversation, to really get into that. And it was sort of like, no, you don't talk about that. You don't really. And yeah, and I think what you're finding is a lot of people are talking about, a lot of people are like getting involved all the time and sort of driving, you know, it's polarizing for the most. I mean, right now, everyone, friends, family are sort of like, you know, at this impasse with each other. But
something that we've discussed, I think, several times, and actually, before, I know we're coming to a close here, but I do want to share. I shared your stream with a few places, but I want to share it one more place real quick. If I can log in real quick here.
All right.
So something that people have asked too is very commonly is, oh, well, you know, have people asked you from your police department, have people asked you to stop? And I used to be able to always give the answer up until like maybe a couple weeks ago. I used to always be able to give the answer. No, none of the officers have even asked us to stop. And it's funny that almost a whole year came by without any of the officers asking me to stop, you know, trying to post about what we're doing, working with other officers, regardless of whether we agreed necessarily on the semantics, but working with other officers to get things out into the media. Finally, one comes around and goes, who is very, I used to look up to a lot, and was like, hey, jockeying, also I knew that he was jockeying for the new promotion, and goes, hey, you're hurting officers. You're hurting officers by posting about all these things that you're doing, about speaking out about all these things about our police department. Okay, so tell me how me talking about how the deputy chief is resigning is hurting you. Tell me about how, you know, you haven't done anything to speak up after we left, how you haven't done anything to change the system. You know it's broken. But again, it's funny to say that the officers, the ones that are hurting, that I know that are hurting under this corrupt regime, are not the ones that asked me to stop. It's someone that's jockeying for a promotion, because he wants to be able to go to the chief and be like, hey, just like how you gave that officer, canine officer, look, I told him to stop, and I used to be his supervisor. Like, it's just crazy, man. Like, we live in a world where things like this are not just allowed to happen, but they go by as though they're okay, and they're not.
Awesome. Well, dude, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. And I look forward to you know, platforming your journey more and more in the future as my audience grows.
Thanks, Walter. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. And it was cool. Like, I mean, how we got connected was my followers were like, they sort of mandated this. They're like, you two need to talk, and the thing.
Yeah, and then
blasted
the same thing.
My followers on TikTok blasted your page and then blasted mine. I was like, I guess we're doing an interview.
Well, and funny enough, whenever we first finally got on the phone, I was probably in the middle of Utah shooting this police corruption film, and like we discussed it, and so I pulled over at a gas station, like a Route 66 in the middle of Utah, like almost in the desert and in broad sunlight, and was just talking to you about all this craziness. Awesome. And here we are, you know, and we've gone through these phases where like the algorithm has done us well and not done us well, and shared notes and all kinds of craziness. But here we are, man, and I appreciate your platform. I always appreciate your time, man, and your input.
And I'm interested. I thought you're a great person to platform, because the funny thing is I get a lot of opposition, and you know, it's like, well, this guy's a cop. He's also served his country. You know what? Like, you know, you want to argue with, you know, a former police officer and a former Marine. You know, it's like, okay, you know, have at it. Like, go for it.
And on top of that, just trying to, again, I think it's really hard for people, especially because they're like, a lot of people just do believe this. And shout out to King Owl. You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. But, you know, people are always like, oh, like, you know, good cops don't exist. Well, you know, I hate that people are so upset with our system that they believe that, and I understand why. But there are people, whether you want to call us cops or not, there are people that are trying to do the right thing. We just so happened to have started doing the right thing, carrying a badge and a shield. The first TikTok video I ever did, Walter, and I was excited to tell you this, and we'll finish with this. The very first TikTok video I ever posted whistleblowing was on May 4th last year. It is May 3rd. It's about to be May 4th, man. So it's almost a whole year since I became a whistleblower.
It's been a wild ride for you, man. Yeah.
They terminated me on May 11th after that. And so it is on, May the 4th be with you. And we've gone a whole year. And so I can't wait to see where we end up, man.
No, and to this add, but I think the good cop, bad cop argument is like, I hate it because it's sort of missing the point. Like if there's a systemic problems don't involve a single human being. And, that the problem is like systemic issues are bigger than, and that's the problem with systemic things. It's like, it's not one person's fault. You're just a cog within this thing. When you talk with people that are at these institutions that are problems, there's, it's like, well, I'm just doing this thing. Well, I'm just doing this. And then it's like, what can I do? I just do patrol. What can I, and then and you have well-intentioned people, you get, and then, but I mean, if you have a quota, if you have productivity points, if the department is incentivizing a certain thing, you're going to be doing the bad things, like if if you can't speak out against your fellow officer when you see something bad, it turns you into that. And it's sort of not, there's this good cop. Not all cops are bad. Not all cops are. It's sort of, I'm like, that's not the point. Systemic is systemic.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. We have to continue to show that there is not that cops don't have a platform. You don't have a place that you can go. You can't, we're a great example of that. And I think there's a lot of cases that officers reach out to me frequently, but not just through the projects that I work on now, but also still through TikTok, that reach out to me for tips and help and assistance. And hey, who do I need to talk to? Do you know anybody? Do you know a lawyer or something like that? And we've received international or not just international assistance, but international support. I've had internal affairs officers from the UK, from the UK, from Canada, from Australia, and even from Brazil reach out to me and say, hey, I think what you're doing is great. You guys are doing a great job. And it just goes to show that internationally, police officers are not, especially at the bottom, are not allowed to speak out. They're not allowed to have a voice. And so I think we need to continue to show that, to show the truth that officers don't have a place that they can go and really connect with the public except for face-to-face and show hey, look, I don't agree with this. Because there's plenty of officers that say, hey, I don't agree with this, and they get terminated, or hey, I don't agree with this, they get indicted, arrested, even charged. And then, when they're no longer wearing that badge, can you even consider them a cop? And that raises the question. And so I think that those cops, that they are cops through and through by definition, because again, when you go back to what COP stands for, it would be constable on patrol and being a stakeholder in the community. I think by very definition that police officers and individuals that care enough about their community, regardless of whether their badge is taken from them, are still fighting for positive change, and they should be considered good cops.
Cool, man. Awesome. Well, that's a great way to end. Fantastic. So thank you. Always a pleasure, man. And thank you to all my viewers. You can follow him on TikTok. You can also follow me on TikTok when my account isn't banned anymore. But hey.
When did you get banned? Hold on. You got banned?
I got banned. So
at 1 million followers?
So yesterday I went to a protest to troll everyone. It was an anti-vax protest. And I went with Crackhead Barney, and she does what I do. She got arrested. She's black. She got arrested. I spent the rest of the day trying to find out which precinct she's at, doing jail support. And we found her precinct. I filmed her arrest. I posted it on TikTok. I filmed and live streamed us trying to find the precinct. And I filmed her release. Now, here's the thing. She is a black girl that was, as a political statement, and she's a comedian, performance artist, was wearing blackface. Okay? These viewers thought that she was a white girl wearing blackface and canceled me for being associated with someone in blackface. And I was like, all right. I made a statement about this. I was like, you know, if a black woman wants to do this, the black community can have this conversation with her. It's literally none of my business. Literally none. I know my place. You know what? Y'all talk. That's an intra-communal conversation. But in the meantime, a few hundred people unfollowed me immediately. They reported all my videos for hate speech, and then my account got banned. And
automatically,
And I was like, dude, I am going around filming a black woman, a friend, get arrested and trying to get her out of jail. How is that problem? I'm problematic? What is wrong with you? And so I was really harsh on social media today when I put out a statement. I was like, you know what? This crowd that does this, you guys don't show up to protest. You don't give money to bail funds. You don't uplift marginalized voices. You just go online and look for problematic stuff to make a thing with. And you contribute nothing. You know, there's people doing the work. You're not one of them. You know what? Screw all of you. I'm a little frustrated by that, but I'll get my account back. For this reason, I've spread my following, on multiple platforms. So it's not just hinging on TikTok, but I was like, you know what? There's plenty of times when I do stuff that's problematic and you can call me out, but I was like, this is the weirdest. My brain hurt. I was like, it's the weirdest time to call me problematic. What am I?
Well, that's so funny how it works, because people can abuse that system really easily and just report you, and it flags you, and then it'll automatically take you down. So the hardest struggle is just going to be getting through to an actual human to try to get them to undo it.
Yeah, I have a very good friend that's been helping me with this, but it's still it's aggravating. And I was so what is wrong with you? 300 of you unfollowed me. Because you where did you think that I was racist? Have you not seen literally any of my videos ever? She's not a white girl in blackface. And then my live stream was banned because she was on my live stream, and I told her, I was like, people think you're a white girl in blackface, so she leaned into that. She thought it was hysterical. She's black. She's like, no, you're right. I'm Russian. I came here from Poland, and I fucked Vladimir Putin, and
oh Lord. And I can see on TikTok was like.
So then there was while she's talking, my live got banned because people were like, "Son of a bitch," and I was like, "Oh my god!" You guys need to recognize satire, Yep. That I thought was funny. I was like, all right, that's kind of funny that you guys literally fell for this. She's on camera saying there's a black woman on camera telling my TikTok followers that she's white, and they believed her. And I was like, okay, you know what? But then when my account got banned, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. So you know what? That's the woke mob that contributes nothing to, activism.
It's on both sides of activism, man. I'm sure we've had someone even in here. I haven't read too many of the comments, but I'm sure that we've had people drop in here or there, but it's on both sides. And so we'll start a movement. It'll be Free Walter? Is that
Free Walter.
Free Walters. Yeah. Free Walters. Hashtag Free Walter. And then in the meantime, everyone can follow me. It's officer.ash on TikTok.
Officer.ash, on TikTok. Yeah, there you go, man. Awesome. Thank you, sir. It's been a lovely pleasure. Thank you for your service. And cheers,
thank
man.
you for your service and trying to bring about positive change, my friend.
All right,
until next time, and hashtag Free Walter.
All right, thank you. Cheers, guys.